Ladies and gentlemen, from the studios in the wrestling capital of the South, it's another terrific episode of The BENGEBUSTER Show. Please welcome your host, Tony Binge.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The BENGEBUSTER Show. It is July the 31st, and we have made it through one more summer month, and unfortunately, we don't have any exciting news to talk about. We didn't. This has been kind of a crazy summer, not getting able to do anything, see concerts and stuff. But hopefully things are going to get better as we get closer to fall. One can only hope for. But right now, I want to bring in my co-host. I'm talking about Mr. Chris Plano. Chris, what is going on?
Terrific, Tony. How are you? Thank you for having me back on. And wow, another week has gone by, and yeah, gosh, July is in the books. It's August tomorrow, and you know the summer's going to be over. We're going to be into Labor Day and into the fall, and boy, it just seems like 2020 is rolling by. But it's definitely a different year for us here in the United States and around the world, and still trying to battle this COVID-19 pandemic and the coronavirus and just everything else happening. But as always, each and every week, look forward to talking to you in another great podcast.
Yeah, it's going to be good, man. So, Chris, here we are at the end of July. Do you have any exciting news, anything that's fun that has happened to you or that you got to do for the July? I mean, you know, July is supposed to be the big month that everybody celebrates barbecues and going to the beach and doing all that stuff. But, Chris, this year, this summer, it hasn't really been much of that going on, is it?
No, it really hasn't. I mean, I've gotten out a few times. I did go to a July 4th cookout at a friend's house. I did do that much at least, and have gotten out here and there a little bit. And, you know, I got my eye watching NASCAR and golf. But, hey, if you're a sports enthusiast, it looks like baseball has started up this week, and so has the NBA and hockey as well. Believe it or not, they're playing hockey in the middle of the summer. So the major sports are coming back, and now, you know, the biggest thing is, you know, what's going to happen with the NFL and college football as we head towards late August and September, and what that's going to look like in the sporting world. And it's just a different time, a different era, and you kind of just gotta just ride the tide and, you know, try to stay the course.
Yeah, for sure. It's been kind of a quiet week at my house. The family, they packed up and they went up north, as I've kind of joked around a little bit about my wife being from Boston. So my wife, my daughter, my son, my mother-in-law, they took off last Saturday and drove up to Boston and New Hampshire and Maine, and they're up there doing their thing, and I've been sitting back here doing mine. And Chris, I hadn't got a lot done. I got a lot of sleeping done while they were gone. I had plans to renovate my studio, do some stuff in there, change around, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But that's okay. But I am excited about this week's podcast because you know the whole month of July, I decided that I thought a good topic for our podcast would be the Great American Bash, because for years, Great American Bash was a tradition in Jim Crockett Promotions, and then later on in WCW, and we had some pretty good Great American Bashes. So I thought the best way to end this month, Great American Bash, would be to talk about the absolute worst Great American Bash in the history of Great American Bashes. And I'm talking about Great American Bash 1991. Just a couple of weeks before this big pay-per-view, Ric Flair went up north. He left, took the world title, and went to WWF and left them high and dry. But man, I tell you what, Chris, I went back last night and watched this pay-per-view, and I was just scratching my head at some of the matches. And some of the matches I did enjoy. It's just the booking of it. You could tell that this show was just like they had plans, and then when Flair left, they didn't know what to do. So they were like scrambling to put something together. What do you think?
Absolutely, and in some circles, you've said maybe the worst Great American Bash of all time. It may have been the worst pay-per-view of all time as well. If not, I would say it's definitely in the top 5 when it comes to pro wrestling. But yes, WCW was, I'll use the word scrounging to put the final touches on the card together. Obviously, with Ric Flair departing 2 weeks earlier with the World Heavyweight Championship, the WCW Executive Vice President Jim Herd at that time fired Flair over a contract dispute. And then at that time, I read that the champion had to put a $25,000 security deposit down to hold the world title. And then, of course, they give the world title back to the company. They get their deposit back. That didn't happen. Flair took off with the title to a very eager Vince McMahon up in the World Wrestling Federation, who exploited that when Flair made his debut in the WWF, which was really a big deal, and they referred to him as the world champion, and they ran with that as long as they could, and the WWF definitely got some steam out of that as well.
Yeah, I remember seeing an interview one time with Ric Flair talking, where they he got into it, finally got into it, had enough of Jim Herd, and Jim Herd sent Doug Dillinger, head of security, to Ric Flair's house to pick up the World Championship belt. And Ric Flair said, "Well, if you send him to my house, you better make sure you send my $25,000, because that was the deposit that he had put in, plus interest. He wanted $25,000 plus interest, because since 1983, when Ric Flair put up the $25,000, he never asked for it back. So he felt like, since they held it all, the NWA had held it all this time, that he definitely earned some interest, and I'd feel the same way. But instead, to kind of give you an idea how dumb he was, he tells Ric Flair, he says, "Well, just keep the belt." And Flair's like, "Okay, fine." So then Flair calls Vince McMahon and says, "Hey Vince, I think I'm ready to come up north now, and by the way, I got the belt." And Vince said, "Okay, send me the belt." So Flair said he put it in a box and shipped it to Connecticut, and then Vince and Bobby Heenan started teasing it on television. And I remember as a kid, man, watching that, and I turned it over, and one of my friends in school said, "Hey, Bobby Heenan's got a belt like Ric Flair's." And of course, that belt had, back then that was only one of those belts. And when you saw that belt, you knew that was a real belt. So I knew at that time the WWF was about to really take off, having Ric Flair and the NWA World Heavyweight title belt there up north. I think if they'd booked that a little bit differently and made it look like Ric Flair was just coming in to take over, I think they would have got more out of it. But any event, Flair took the belt, went up north, and had he said some of the best 2 years of his life, but left us with this pay-per-view that we had to watch. Fans, this pay-per-view, the Great American Bash 1991, took place at the world-famous Baltimore Arena in Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore Arena had hosted several big-time NWA pay-per-views, like the Jim Crockett Senior Memorial Cup was there, and some other Great American Bashes were there as well. But this one, 1991, took place on July the 14th. It drew 9,320 people, with the main event originally scheduled to be Ric Flair versus Lex Luger. But like I said earlier, Flair left, and that left us with to determine a new champion, Barry Windham and Lex Luger, and we'll get into that match a little bit later on. But Chris, some of the matches on this show, as we look at it, it really blows you away. Now, I'm disappointed as I'm looking over the matches that they had a dark match, the Junkyard Dog versus Black Bart. This match goes 12 minutes 45 seconds, and I'd have to say I didn't see this match, but it's got to be probably one of the best matches on the card. What do you think?
Yeah, for talk about trying to get the fans in their seats. A 13-minute dark match. They were probably still figuring out how the rest of the show was going to go for the night. But no. I mean, Junkyard Dog, obviously had a really great run in the World Wrestling Federation. Prior to this, I mean, definitely in the waning years of his career, Black Bart, just known as a brawler in all territories. I mean, two, respectful veterans in the ring. So, I mean, great opening match. I didn't realize JYD was actually, I don't know how long his run was really in the WCW at this point. But hey, he defeats Black Bart in a dark match, and good way for Baltimore. Baltimore was really kind of one of those crossover cities, kind of like DC, where they saw both the NWA, WCW, and WWF shows, if not every other month. So I think it just relates to the crowd as well that's on hand. And 9,300 back then, back in '91, which was an interesting year for wrestling, even the early '90s was. I would say fairly strong for WCW as well, considering everything going into the show.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was definitely a good match. I'm sure. Black Bart, he was on one. Actually, he's been on the BengeBuster show now twice, and I think he'll be coming back again here pretty soon. We're gonna try to get him back on the show, but. Because Black Bart is never a loss for words, and Chris, when we get him on the show, you're gonna love talking to Black Bart. He is a funny guy, but what I like about him, he tells you like it is. He don't sugarcoat nothing, and he'll tell you that too. Hey, I'm gonna tell you how it is. But this dark match, got the fans there in the arena off to a start. But then when you turn on the pay-per-view, the very first opening match is really weird. PN News and Beautiful Bobby Eaton are taking on Stunning Steve Austin and Terrence Taylor with Lady Blossom. This is a scaffold match, but instead of knocking your opponent off the scaffold, you got to make your way across the other side and capture the flag.
Well, talk about some pretty weird teams here. Austin at the time is the TV champion, I believe. At this time, so obviously the TV title on the line. They got to capture the flag. Literally these guys have to. I would guess crawl across the scaffold to get the flag. How wide is the scaffold? Maybe 3 feet, 4 at the most.
Yeah.
You got 4 guys up there. This isn't like your classic, rock and roll versus Midnight Express scaffold match or something.
Or Road Warriors. Road Warriors versus Midnight Express.
Right. A Road Warriors Midnight Express, exactly. And to start off with a scaffold match in a pay-per-view is just really interesting, the positioning of this on the show. I'm not sure if WCW was just wanting to get this match out of the way. I don't know what it was, or maybe they needed to because there was 2 steel cage matches later on that evening. I don't know what was going through their mind, but really interesting to start with a scaffold match. I feel like there may not even have been a whole lot of build-up to this match, being at the first match on the show, and it's just interesting across the board. And Terrence Taylor and Lady Blossom, just names of I don't even really hear any. I think of Terry Taylor as a Red Rooster and stuff.
Yeah, well, now Lady Blossom, she definitely earned that name because most of the time she was blossoming out of her blouse.
Right.
Back then, I would have loved to have saw a match between Lady Blossom and Missy Hyatt.
Yeah, absolutely.
It didn't matter who won or lost. It wouldn't have mattered who won or lost. Us guys would have definitely been the winners on that one.
That's right. No, but I mean, it's just an interesting match. Really kind of a short match, only 6 minutes long, and PN News, did some stints with ECW as well and WCW. So I mean, it just interesting, and I kind of feel for Bobby Eaton in this match a little bit. I'm sure he was having some flashbacks of, I think, some classic scaffold matches back in the day.
Yeah, I'm sure Bobby was happy because for once he didn't have to take a bump off one.
Exactly. I don't think anybody wants to take a bump off a scaffold, but hey, they that's how it goes. But they were the victors that evening, and just an interesting place on the card for a scaffold match as the opener, coming into a pay-per-view.
Yeah. Now going from there, we go to a singles match, putting the new gimmick of Scott Hall as the Diamond Stud with his manager DDP Diamond Dallas Page as they take on Tom Zink. In this one, this match goes about 9 minutes. I did kind of enjoy this match a little bit. And at the time back then, as a young kid watching this, I remember seeing the Diamond Stud and go, man, he's new. He's a really big guy. And I had no idea that he'd been in the business for so long. And it was actually Scott Hall. He had just shaved off his beard or his mustache and dyed his hair jet black, and put on a little bit more weight. And I didn't even know it was even him until later on, and whenever he came back to WCW as Scott Hall with the NWO, I was like, wait a minute, that's a Scott Hall from, American Starship Coyote, I think was his first gimmick. But pretty good match. What do you think about this match, Chris?
I mean, I look at this match on the show, and again, interesting match. I mean, knowing Scott Hall from his run as Razor Ramon in the WWF was unprecedented. The build up for that, I mean, it was a great gimmick, and even Tom Zink had a great run in the WWF as well. So I kind of look at them as two wrestlers from the WWF, kind of on a WCW show. Interesting as the Diamond Stud. I think people look at him as either Scott Hall or Razor Ramon in the ring. So trying to repackage the image, but it's kind of tough to shake that a little bit as well. DDP at that time, I guess, was managing. I'm not sure exactly where he was in '91. And then, Tom Zink was a really good wrestler, never really over big time. So I'm not surprised Scott Hall goes over, on this match, which went a little over 9 minutes.
Yeah. Like I said, I did enjoy this match. But moving on from this one, the next one was hilarious. This match was a definite stupid match. But we had the All-American Ron Simmons taking on the great and wonderful and powerful Oz with Merlin the Wizard. This match was so theatrical. One of the things that I remember watching about this that I didn't understand is they've got Oz, which was actually Kevin Nash, and the Wizard, who was actually Kevin Sullivan, but they had them wearing Halloween masks to look like old men. And I'm just watching this match as they come out. And I'm like, who booked this crap? This is crazy.
Yeah. It was kind of like Ron Simmons going up against the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
And it was like, what does Ron Simmons even do with this?
Right.
What did he even do? And actually, they said Ron Simmons was on fire in this match.
Oh yeah.
Actually, when I read one of the ratings, and it's like, and it's Scott Hall. Not Scott Hall. Kevin Nash. Excuse me. I'm thinking NWO here.
Yeah.
Again, going as Oz. It's just odd. Just overall, and Merlin the Wizard, Kevin Sullivan. It's just like, everyone knows, these wrestlers under different names, and it's just like, what is going on here? If you didn't know what was going on, you would think these were just, it's kind of like a comic book series almost. But hey, good for Ron Simmons in this match, going over. I mean, defeating Kevin Nash, and Ron Simmons is always, a rugged wrestler in the ring, and then someone I always have kept my eye on throughout his career, both in WCW and obviously his run in the WWF with JBL as well, and their skits that they did. So I always usually kept an eye on him, throughout his career.
Yeah, that was definitely a good match. I enjoyed that one. It's just one of those things where, it's just one of those matches where, at the time Kevin Nash was green. He was just starting out, and they were, because I think by this time he'd had a couple different gimmicks in WCW, because he had been, I think he was one of the Master Blasters, and then he was Oz, and then he goes from Oz to Vinny Vegas, and then finally he leaves and goes to WWE and becomes Diesel and actually gets a gimmick that works for him. But you know, all in all, props definitely go to Ron Simmons on this match. Now, the next match that I want us to talk about is putting the great Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, for the first time against each other, which was really shocking to me. I remember watching that on television when Ricky Morton joined the York Foundation, and came out there, and then Robert appears and says, and now this happened at the Clash of Champions right before the Great American Bash, and Ricky, Ricky's out there and he tells the people, he says, in his promo, he says, fans, whenever I signed the contract to join the York Foundation, that means I never have to sign another autograph. And man, that was big words coming, because Ricky was like the ultimate baby face of the Rock and Roll Express. A great baby face. And then they turn him heel and put him in the York Foundation. Well, then Robert runs out and tells Ricky, "Hey brother, I've been trying to call you. You haven't been returning my phone calls. I mean, my knee is better. We're ready to go. Hey, what's the deal, man?" And Ricky tells him, says, "Well, the deal is money, and a lot of it." And then Terry Taylor and the big cat Ernie Curtis Hughes, they get ready to attack Robert, and Ricky says, "No, that's not in the contract. That is not in the contract." And he says, "Robert, I've been waiting 10 years to do this." And he turns on Robert Gibson, and the place goes nuts. And that was like I remember watching that, like I said, as a kid, and I was like, "Oh, I cannot believe this." The one team that you thought you'd never see break up just broke up. Ricky and Robert. It's like that year was 91, and I was like, man, my favorite tag team, the Rock Expresses, broke up. My favorite rock group, Motley Crue, just broke up. What is going on in this world? It was crazy, man. It was a crazy time.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And Richard Morton with Alexandra York, Terry Runnels. Was his manager here, and great. I mean, I don't know. I think again, to have Ricky Morton take on Robert Gibson in a singles match, everyone looks okay. They've been the Rock and Roll Express. They've done so much in the industry, in the business. What's going on here? But also, what two better individuals to wrestle each other in the ring that wouldn't know each other inside and out and back again than Ricky and Robert. And it went 17 minutes, and they probably could have won an hour if they wanted to.
For sure.
In the ring and put on a show. Yeah,
it was definitely a good match. I enjoyed it. Now moving from there, going on to the next match, a 6-man match, and now this one had some of my favorite people in there. The Natural, Dustin Rhodes, and the Young Pistols, Tracy Smothers and Steve Armstrong, take on the Fabulous Freebirds, Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, or Jimmy Jam Garvin, Michael P.S. Hayes, and the new member of the Freebirds, Bad Street, who was actually, in case you people didn't know it, was actually Brad Armstrong in the Hood. And their manager was Big Daddy Dink, which was Sir Oliver Humperdinck. I was telling that name, Big Daddy Dink. But you know what though, Chris, we laugh, but I did kind of like this version of the Freebirds. Although in my eyes, the Freebirds will always be, no offense to Jimmy Garvin, I love Jimmy Garvin, but will be the originals, because I just thought that they were just a badass team of Buddy Jack Roberts, Terry Bam Bam Gordy, and of course Michael Hayes. But I did like this version of the Freebirds, because it was like a new decade, and so they made some changes and kind of brought it more up to new stuff going on, new look, and with having Big Daddy Dink out there. Who looked like a Harley? He looked like a Hell's Angel out there in the gimmick he had on. But I enjoyed this 6-man match. This match went 17 minutes 10 seconds, and it was actually a elimination match. So as you get eliminated, somebody on your team has to leave. And on this one, the first wrestler to get eliminated was Steve Armstrong. He got eliminated by Michael Hayes, as Michael and Badstreet gave him a double DDT. Next wrestler to be eliminated was Michael Hayes. He gets disqualified for backdropping Smothers over the top rope. Then the next one was Tracy Smothers. He gets eliminated by Jimmy Garvin with a double DDT, again by Badstreet. Then Jimmy Garvin gets eliminated by the lariat from Dustin Rhodes. And then it leaves Dustin Rhodes and Badstreet in there, the final two. And, of course, Dustin wins the match, giving Badstreet the Bulldog. The whole show, or this whole match, lasted 17 minutes, 10 seconds, elimination style. What do you think, Chris?
It's really it's a good match. I mean, I look, Dustin Rhodes, young Dustin Rhodes here, and then, Tracy Smothers, he's been everywhere, whether it's WCW, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, WWF. I even think he was in ECW for a little bit as well. And then you got Steve Armstrong from legendary Armstrong Brothers, obviously one of the sons of Bullet Bob Armstrong, and then the Freebirds. And if you're Michael Hayes in the ring here, you got to work. But he's probably saying, where's Terry Gordy, Buddy Roberts here, the Freebirds of old. But, obviously, the angle with Jimmy Garvin being a Freebird, and then Badstreet under the hood, Brad Armstrong. But it's interesting. I still can't get over Big Daddy Dink here. I kind of forgot about they repurposed Sir Oliver Humperdinck, but I think kind of everyone remembers him as Sir Oliver Humperdinck, no matter what you do with them. But good match, a long elimination match. I mean, it seemed the eliminations went pretty quick once they started.
Yeah.
Leaving it with Dustin and Badstreet at the end. And obviously with Dustin going over there. But, interesting times. I mean, though, when I think of the Fabulous Freebirds, I think of the original three. That's just me.
Yeah. You and I both, Chris. I mean, man, looking back, if some of you listeners at home never witnessed the Freebirds versus Von Erich feud, I highly recommend going on the network and pulling that up under the World Class Championship Wrestling page. Man, there have been some hot feuds in this world, or in the wrestling business, but man, I don't think any of them were as hot as the Von Erich Freebird feud.
Oh no! Oh my gosh, no! I mean, 6-man tag team, 6-man, sometimes even 8-man.
Yeah, you had to get the old man involved.
Yeah, absolutely. But when they hit Badstreet USA and the Freebirds were coming down the aisle, I mean, it was just like you knew it was going to be on. And Michael P.S. Hayes would always have that head bobbing, and he'd be ready to go.
Yeah,
but walking down the aisle,
down the aisle, and and back then, they of course they had to change their gimmick because of because back then they used to wear the stars and bars to the ring, part of the ring jacket, but the Freebirds, man, they were just like bad dudes that just they just took they didn't take no names, they just beat everybody in their way. I loved them. I always thought a lot of the Freebirds. That was like one of my all-time favorite teams was the Freebirds, and man, some of the stuff they did. But if you go back and watch the Bastard USA video, I mean, man, that video was just, I mean, it looked like a real video from MTV.
Absolutely. It was well put together, and I was a Freebird fan. I mean, I just loved. I think I just loved the persona and the gimmick of it, maybe even more than some of the wrestling in the ring, more than anything else. But it was kind of like you just knew, I think, Badstreet USA, Atlanta GA, and the whole thing. It was just, it kind of just worked for professional wrestling, and they were in at a great time when tag team wrestling, and really when 6-man tag team wrestling was heavily publicized in numerous federations at that point in different wrestling organizations.
Yeah, and as we get ready to move on to the next match, I'm going to play a little bit of Bass Street USA, so some of you fans out there that that don't know this song can hear it, and the ones that love this song, like myself, can relive those days of seeing the three Freebirds coming down the aisle in the Sportatorium and getting ready to beat up the Von Erichs with Michael Hayes singing. The further down the block you went, the better it got, Chris.
That's it, man. It's the better it got, and you don't want to run into those guys in the dark alley. You're not going to come out ever the same again.
No, and Chris, I don't know if you know this, but if you go back and watch the Bass Street USA video, of course, you know the at this time the Freebirds were Jimmy Garvin, Michael Hayes, and Terry. Michael Hayes, Buddy Roberts, and Terry Gordy were the Freebirds then. But if you watch the video, the Bass Street USA video, and go back and look at it, there's a scene where in the verse he talks about the ambulance driver. The ambulance driver plays the wrestler in this video that plays the ambulance driver is Jimmy Garvin.
Well, I did not know that.
Yeah, if you watch it, he's wearing like the white like doctor's coat, and he turns around and says, and he starts singing. Yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, anyway, I like the Freebirds. So, but now moving on to our next match, another weird match, the Yellow Dog, which was actually Brian Pillman, taking on Johnny B. Bad with his manager Theodore R. Long. This match, the Yellow Dog, is actually Brian Pillman in a mask. He defeats Johnny B. Bad by disqualification whenever Teddy Long interferes and tries to unmask the Yellow Dog. If he had been able to unmask him and show the world that the Yellow Dog was Brian Pillman, then Brian Pillman would not be allowed to wrestle in WCW ever again. The Yellow Dog gimmick, it went on for a while. It was, I think he started out with Barry Windham and then moved on to Johnny B. Bad. Chris, what are your thoughts of Brian Pillman as the Yellow Dog?
I don't know. I never really got into it. It was a good angle, I think, for television with the mask and getting the mask off, and him having to leave WCW. I kind of get. I mean, I kind of know. I think everyone knows him as Flying Brian Pillman. Again, this is, I think, another one of Dusty's angles. Behind the scenes. Kind of deals with Brian Pillman. And for Johnny B. Bad, as I read, really his first pay-per-view appearance for WCW as well for him. So just an interesting match overall, but I also think at this point they were really pushing Johnny B. Bad at this point, but the Yellow Dog wins by DQ in this match. I think Teddy Long interferes at some point. Only goes 6 minutes. I think it's a prelude of what's to come. A little bit. And again, coming off of two matches prior to them that went 17 minutes each, respectively. The next few seem pretty quickly.
Yeah, they definitely do. Our next match, match number 8 on the card, is Big Josh, who was actually a pretty big star in World Class Championship Wrestling, not as Big Josh, but he takes on Black Blood with Kevin Sullivan. Now Kevin Sullivan's making another appearance. Now he's Kevin Sullivan and not the Wizard. But Black Blood, in case you fans don't know who Black Blood was, that was actually Billy Jack Haynes.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I look at this match, I look at yet another kind of WWF wrestlers from the '80s. Billy Jack Haynes was huge in the WWF as a wrestler and got a really good push as a mid card, wrestler for them. Had that Irish angle working, and it worked for the WWF back then. And unfortunately, out of ring troubles kind of, was his demise in the WWF and being let go by Vince McMahon outside of the ring. And then obviously it seems at this point, if you were let go by WWF, you ended up in WCW. That seemed to be the way it went back
and forth.
In the early '90s, and vice versa as well. And Big Josh here, Matt Bourne was Big Josh at this time, and an interesting lumberjack match. I'm not sure what the build-up was for this particular match, and then Kevin Sullivan becomes now Kevin Sullivan just a couple of matches later from Merlin the Wizard. So just an odd time here. And I think for Billy Jack Haynes, another kind of like Junkyard Dog, was in the waning years of his wrestling career. Obviously just trying to get the most out of it, on the national level.
Well, I think the thing with Matt Bourne is this was right before he really got his big break. And got a job with WWF. But, right now he's Big Josh. He's like the lumberjack, and they got him in a lumberjack match. This match goes 5 minutes, 39 seconds with Big Josh winning. Now, this shortly after this, I'm sure it wasn't too much time in between here. Big Josh will leave WCW and go to WWF and have like his most successful run to date. As Doink the Clown, the evil clown, which when I first saw this gimmick, I said, "What in the world is going on here?" But as I watched it more and as the character involved, I enjoyed Doink the Clown.
Oh, absolutely, and then it worked with the fans and what Vince McMahon was trying to do, and young kids and. It just worked. It was always a feel-good time when Doink the Clown came to the ring. You were going to be entertained, and somehow he was going to win, some way, shape, or form, and everyone leaves happy. And then later on down the road, I believe, if my mind is correct, becomes a mean Doink the Clown as well. Yeah. May not be the funny clown, and but overall, it worked. And then next thing you know, there were many Doink the Clowns running around.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Doink, the independent scene and different things.
Yeah, and matter of fact, one of the Doinks was actually on our show last week. Fans, our good friend Tommy or Drake Tungsten. At one time, he was one of the infamous Doink the Clowns on the independent circuit. Anyway, great match there. Little lumberjack match. Good little gimmick match in between to kind of give everybody a little break. Now this next match goes 6 minutes 13 seconds and goes about 6 minutes 10 seconds too long. El Gigante taking on the One Man Gang. Moo! I always want to do that, but the One Man Gang taking on El Gigante, One Man Gang's manager again, Kevin Sullivan. This match, like I said, goes 6 minutes 13 seconds with El Gigante winning. Chris, do you know the story of El Gigante and how he got a job in WCW?
I do not know the story. No, I can honestly say no, but I am actually reading a review of this match. So, one person says he thought half the crowd was sleeping during this match.
I'm sure they were.
But God, I mean, just El Gigante. Hey, he was a huge guy at the time.
7 feet tall.
Yeah, he was tall, and and WCW, they were looking for big guy. I mean, obviously, they were looking for big guys, tall guys, monsters, and he fit the role well. And One Man Gang, no slouch of himself in the ring either. Obviously, in his WWF days and WCW and other promotions that he wrestled for, so no slouch by any means in the ring. And you're stepping in with One Man Gang, it's going to be a brawl.
Yeah. Now, El Gigante, the story behind him of how he got his start in WCW, the Atlanta Hawks basketball team scouted him in Argentina and said, "Oh my God, we got this 7 foot tall guy. He's definitely going to be a great basketball player." Only problem was he was clumsy. He'd trip over his foot. So they said, "Man, we brought this guy from Argentina. We got to do something for him." And at the time, Ted Turner owned WCW and, of course, the Atlanta Hawks. So they said, well, let's make him a wrestler. I mean, definitely make some money off him as big as he was. But unfortunately, from the stories that I've heard from other guys, Elegante was just one of those guys that just didn't get the business. I mean, he just didn't get it. And so he had a little success from WCW, not much. Went to WWF and had a little run up there. I think he had a couple matches with The Undertaker. But unfortunately, Elegante actually passed away at a very young age. But I think like WCW's guys back then, the bookers thought that Elegante was going to be their Andre the Giant. But the difference was Andre was trained by the guys that knew the business, and he traveled with these guys, the old school guys, and taught him how to work. Elegante, he didn't have that opportunity.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I remember Elegante. I mean, he was huge, man. I mean, he was just menacing in the ring, and had a great push with WCW, and did some great things, you know, for wrestling. You know, obviously, I know you mentioned Andre. He was may have been really in his waning years of his career, maybe even retired at this point. But it's you know, I mean, I do remember him. You know, it was a time, and he defeated the one-man gang, you know, with Kevin Sullivan, and
yes,
you know, went over in the match. But like you said, it might have went a little bit too long, 6 minutes.
Yeah, I was being a little mean on that one.
Yeah, no, you're fine, and you know, but it was a prelude of what's to come for the rest of the evening, which the next couple of matches intrigue me, because then it really brings me back to what the Great American Bash was all about with the next couple of matches on the card. Yeah,
now this next match was probably the last good match on the show before our two cage main events. The Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff, came back to WCW and started up a little feud with Sting. And in this one, he and Sting are doing a Russian chain match that goes 11 minutes, 38 seconds, with Nikita Koloff defeating Sting. Chris, what are your thoughts on this Russian chain match?
Well, I mean, you know, always, you know, this was a four corners Russian chain match, I believe.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken. Obviously, when you think of anything kind of Russian match, it's going to play into the Nikita Koloff's hands, at least from a psychological standpoint to the fans. You're thinking, okay, Sting's coming in a little bit at a disadvantage here. Obviously, when you come with these kind of matches, and I'll talk about something which maybe could have been an angle on this pay-per-view, but there probably wasn't enough time to promote. But when I look at this match, I mean, now I'm thinking, okay, Great American Bash, you know, mid to late 80s. Now you got Nikita, Sting. You know, this is the WCW's, you know, the former NWA. You know, and I think this probably woke the crowd up, I would say, when Sting hit in the ring and things like that. And, you know, Nikita coming back as well. So, I mean, great match. I mean, for the show, I mean, they went a little under 12 minutes. Nikita defeating Sting in this particular match, and it was a Russian chain match. But again, I would have to say Sting probably probably the biggest pop of the night. I'm saying as when he hit the ring, I would say, of any of the wrestlers on the show. Yeah,
definitely. Now, the next match, before we get to it, is the which I would have thought would have been the main event on this Great American Bash, but unfortunately it was not. But before we get to this match, I've got a little pre-tape interview from then WCW President Jim Herd, as he announces the main event for the Great American Bash in 1991.
Hello, wrestling fans. Jim Herd, Executive Vice President of World Championship Wrestling, with a very important statement for you fans. World Championship Wrestling is saddened to report that after extensive negotiations with Nature Boy Ric Flair, stretching over the course of nearly 1 year, the parties have been unable to arrive at a mutually satisfactory contractual relationship. As a result, the WCW board has decided that the best course of action for WCW and its fans is to declare the World Championship title vacant. and to determine a new champion at the Great American Bash this Sunday in Baltimore. Lex Luger, the #1 contender and current United States champion, will remain on the title card at the Bash. His opponent, as determined by the WCW board, is one you've been waiting for and asking for a long time. It's Barry Windham versus Lex Luger at the Great American Bash in Baltimore. On a personal note, I'd like to take this opportunity to extend my best wishes to Ric Flair and wish him the best in the future. He is a great champion.
Chris. He's gonna wish Ric Flair good luck at the end after he's already, pretty much pushed him out.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, this was, I was gonna say, you throw Barry, and nothing against Barry Windham at all. Nothing against Barry Windham.
No, Barry's a great worker.
Nothing against Barry at all, but getting tossed into a main event match for the vacant World Heavyweight Championship 2 weeks out. It's like, what's the build-up for this? Everyone's got Ric Flair on their mind. They're even saying, people in the Baltimore arena are saying, we want Flair, as they're lowering the cage, and the wrestlers are coming out. And, I mean, if you're both Luger and Windham in this match, you're probably like, what? We got to not only put on a show, but we got to overcome this, it's just fresh on everyone's mind, and that this is just kind of it's really a train wreck, to be honest with you. And,
yeah.
And we got to get the title on someone at the end of the night.
Yeah. I know. I've watched this show, and I even heard people talk about it. But like you said, during this whole match, the fans are chanting, "We want Flair! We want Flair! We want Flair!" And I was waiting. I remember watching this match the first time. I was waiting to see Ric Flair just run down, and he and Barry, beat up Luger, and of course they reformed the Four Horsemen. But of course that didn't happen. Ric Flair was on his way to New York. So what does a company like WCW do when just 6 or 7 days? I'm not even sure the exact time, but Ric Flair leaves and goes to WWF and takes the belt with him. As some of you people don't know, you can't make a championship wrestling belt in 5 minutes time or 2 days. I mean, there's a process. So the only thing I'm about to laugh when I'm about to tell this story, but the only thing they could do was they had to get an old belt, which I think was actually the Western States Heritage Championship. They took that belt, painted it, and then took and taped some pieces of brass over top of it that said World Championship Wrestling Heavyweight Champion. And even if you go back and watch the match, when Luger wins, he don't even hold the belt up. He tries to hide the belt. But man, what a crazy time that WCW was in 1991.
It was a crazy time. I was almost thinking, I know they threw Barry in to make the match, and it was a cage match, but what about if you put Nikita and Sting on earlier in the night, and then the winner of that match takes on Luger for the title?
Yeah.
That might have been a decent angle going in, especially if Sting happened to go over, and then Sting took on Luger. That place would have popped.
Yeah.
I mean, again, 20/20 hindsight here, but I just feel it's kind of like Barry Windham's filling in for Ric Flair. I mean, I'm here.
Yeah, well, I think originally they wanted Flair to when the contract negotiations were going south. I think Jim Herd actually wanted Ric Flair to fly out and drop the belt to Lex Luger, and Flair said, "No, I'm not going to do that." The man I promised the belt to was Barry Windham, and he's the one. I'll go drop the belt to him. But Jim Herd was very adamant about wanting to put the belt on Lex Luger, and Chris, looking back all those years from 87 up 87 through 90, Ric Flair had a little feud going on with Lex Luger. Luger was chasing the belt. As Luger as Luger winning this belt from Barry, it would have to still not sit well with Luger, knowing that all those years that he put in to beat Ric Flair, and he never got to do that.
Never beat Ric Flair. Never did. Had many, many chances. Many. And Flair had his number over the years. And the mystique of trying to beat Ric Flair.
Nobody do it.
Some have done it.
To be the man,
not
beat
too
him.
many can say they did.
Nope, not many at all. Now,
I know he's a 16-time world champion. He always says I had to lose it 15 times.
Right.
But outside of that, I don't think he lost too many more.
No, not at all.
When we're talking singles competition.
Right, for sure.
For sure. And it's kind of funny. I actually I found a picture online of both steel cage matches, and the cage was really short for this paper.
It was.
Big at all.
It was not the normal cage that they use. I don't believe.
I think it was missing one panel and section above the top. I think Elegante might have been able to step over it.
Yeah,
for sure. But it was really. If the cage was 8 feet high, it was lucky to be 8 feet high, and that's really not high for a wrestling on a pay-per-view level of a steel cage match.
Yeah, for sure. Now going on now as the pay-per-view can't get any worse. Now you watch this pay-per-view and you see the world for years. The World Championship is the main event, and that's what everybody come to see. But on this occasion, unfortunately, it's not what they came to see. What the go home match was Rick Steiner against Arn Anderson and Paul E. Dangerously. Now, a little background of this match. The final match was supposed to be the Steiner brothers and Missy Hyatt against Arn Anderson, Barry Windham, and Paul E. Dangerously. After Windham was moved to the title match after Ric Flair left WCW, then Scott Steiner actually sustained an injury. So the match was changed into a mixed tag team match, putting Rick Steiner and Missy Hyatt against Arn Anderson and Paulie Dangerously. Now, before the match, Dick Murdoch and Dick Slater, who was wrestling then as the Hardliners, they came out, they take Missy Hyatt backstage, and they turned the match into a handicap match. So now it's Rick Steiner by himself against Arn Anderson and Paulie Dangerously. Now, here's the backstory of that. The reason why they came and took Missy is in reality that was done because the Maryland State Athletic Commission didn't allow intergendered matches. So that was their way of. Yeah, I didn't either. So that was their way of advertising that she's going to be in this match, and then taking her out of it. So all in all, end of the show, Rick Steiner defeats Arn Anderson and Paulie Dangerously, and we all go home scratching our head, thinking to ourselves, why did we pay that $49.95 pay-per-view buy fee to watch the absolute worst Great American Bash in the history of Great American Bashes? I'm sure that the great Jim Crockett Promotions was watching this and going, man, we went from the price of freedom or the Freedom Challenge to this. Very shocking. But, at the time, WCW in general was in the middle of a changeover. As a matter of fact, this was actually the first pay-per-view that they ran under the World Championship Wrestling banner. Because at this time, I think NWA had left, WCW had broke away from the NWA. And they decided to change it from the NWA to World Championship Wrestling. They were trying to compete with the WWF, and unfortunately, on this pay-per-view, they didn't make it.
Wow. This pay-per-view has been enjoyable to critique and dissect, Tony. I got to tell you, this is... I don't know where I just don't know. I've just read some of the ratings and reviews on this, and it's... It is just all over the board, everyone. But I think at the end of the day, you could say, I think if WCW wants to forget about a pay-per-view, I think this is one of them. They were just let's get to Halloween Havoc or wherever the next Fall Brawl, wherever the heck we're going with this storyline, and let's get out of Baltimore, Maryland as quick as possible.
Yeah, for sure. They were ready to get out of there and to go home, get their pay, and get back to the booking committee on Monday to figure out where in the heck they were going to go. Now, incidentally, one thing that I didn't mention that I almost forgot, so I'm glad I thought of it. Now, the one thing about this world title match, Luger and Barry Windham, this was the first time that we saw Harley Race come out. And at the time, we didn't know whose side he was going to be on. Was he going to be on Barry's or was he going to be on Lex's? And then finally he told Lex, now, and Luger finally hits Barry Windham with the pile driver, which, as we all know, that was Harley Race's signature move. And that right there solidified and let us know who Harley Race is going to be with at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Harley, right? I did read somewhere that Harley was a part of this show, and testament, using the pile driver and the ring. But that was Harley's finishing move, and I think he hurt a lot of wrestlers along the way in his stellar career with that move. You knew if the pile driver was coming, it was going to be about lights out. Not too many wrestlers in the ring could say that they've kicked out of a 3 count after a Harley Race's pile driver.
No, definitely not, and it's going to be something else. Now, that ended our segments of Great American Bash. Since this is July the 31st, and now moving into August, our topics next month is going to be what was the greatest factions in the history of professional wrestling. Now there's been a lot of them. There's been the Four Horsemen, the DX, the NWO. I can go on, and during the month of August, Chris and I are going to be breaking down who was the best, what was the best addition, who was the worst person that got put in that spot, whatever the case may be. But all that's coming up, and on next month's next month's shows, we're gonna break them down. But right now, before we leave the show, I've got a little promo on the play. In my opinion, the greatest faction in the history of professional wrestling. I'm talking about the Four Horsemen.
Today, we're facing a serious threat. We have to meet it as one.
Along with James J. Dillon. Just like Christmas, New Year's, Easter, the 4th of July, anytime you see the Four Horsemen together, it's something special. It's a special day. It's an event, if you would. The newspapers come around, the TV cameras cover it because we're special, because we control wrestling. We rule the world of professional wrestling. The world television champion, the world heavyweight champion, the greatest tag team combination of all time, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, the Andersons, and my humble self. Tony Schiavone, The Rock and myself stand before you in this Yuletide season a little naked. You see, world television champion, world heavyweight champion, but Rocky and I are a little bare. Our tree is a little bare. But let me tell you, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that's temporary. You see Nikita Koloff, you've got a strap. You're the U.S. heavyweight champion. I'm not forgetting that. Ronnie Garvin, Barry Windham, you're the U.S. tag champions. Rocky and myself have not forgot that. So rest assured, GQ Ball, as I stand here before you, rest assured, your U.S. title is in jeopardy. It doesn't get mentioned much, but it's in the back of my mind because I'm going to tell you, I myself, personally, am going to restore the name Anderson to where it should be on top of the heap. I guess what we're trying to say is whether you're a fat, out-of-shape truck driver, whether you're a skinny geek pushing a taxi cab, whether you're a doctor or lawyer that doesn't have half the money we have, this is the way life is. If Ole wants to slap Road Warrior Hawk, he'll do it. If Tully wants to spit on Road Warrior Animal, he'll do it. If Iron wants to take Dusty Rhodes, do all that, he'll do it. And Nikita, if I want you, all three of them, gonna hold you. I'm gonna slap you. I'm gonna spit on you. I'm gonna kick you. And I'm gonna go, woo, all night long.
There it is, fans. The Four Horsemen, probably the baddest faction in the history of professional wrestling. Chris, going into this, what would you say is going to be your favorite faction?
Boy, I'm excited for the month of August to talk about this. You know, I'm leading Four Horsemen. You know, I got NWO on my brain. I've got D-Generation X on my brain. There could be a couple others out there, but I'm going to tell you that interview right there. It seemed like it was after one of the NWA shows. I heard fans in the background. Flair was fired up. Arn Anderson was fired up. There's no one in wrestling today that could talk like that on the microphone and have everyone just so bought in and passionate about it.
Yeah, definitely. So that was a special time in the wrestling business, and unfortunately that time has come and gone. Just like the time for this edition of the Binge Buster Show. We hope that you fans enjoyed it. If you did, go over and download us on your favorite podcast platform. Go like our Facebook page and send me and Chris a message. Let us know what you want to hear, who you'd like to hear on our show, or just tell us how bad we suck. We don't care. We just want some feedback. So fans, make sure you do that. Chris, you have anything you want to say before we go off the air tonight?
Boy, it's been great, Tony, to do this with you each and every week. I know there's a lot going on in the world. It was great to kick it back to the summer of '91. It was a special time for me. I was in the heart of my college studies up in the Northeast. Still had my eye on professional wrestling at that time, but also rock and roll music and different things as a 20-year-old back then. So, but hey, it was great. We had some good laughs on this program, and you kind of wonder. I think some of these guys, they were probably scratching their heads, saying, "Gosh, what was I doing on this program in 1991 with the WCW, and what the heck was going on in wrestling?" And but at the end of the day, the storyline was obviously the departure of Ric Flair from the WCW when his eventual arrival in the World Wrestling Federation.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, fans, make sure you tune in next week, and we'll see you then on the Binge Buster Show.
Thank you for listening to the Binge Buster Show. Make sure you like us on Facebook and download us on your favorite podcast platform.